Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to another EVE Online video. In today's video I want to talk a little bit about the latest devlog that CCP released about the development of EVE Online. It's not the very latest devlog, that one deals with the Blaze skin, which is of course a special skin that the community managed to or could purchase for about a week or so in order to support the family of CCP Blaze, who is a developer who unfortunately passed away unexpectedly last year, and we managed to gather almost $120,000 in support of the family. So this once again shows that while the EVE Online player base can be bastards in game, when it comes to real life stuff, we do pull together and we make some amazing things happen as well. But the devblog I want to talk about today is this one right here, Upwell 2.0, structure changes coming on February the 13th. So right off the bat in the title we get a very important piece of information. All of this is planned for mid-February, which doesn't give us too much time for testing and preparing for all of this. Luckily my personal preparations for moon mining coming to 0.5 systems are well underway. I should be able to get everything done by then without too much trouble. But let's get into this devblog. First part of course gives a little bit of history about everything that went into coming to these changes, but let's start with pillar number 1, full power and low power modes. So here I think nothing too controversial. I think everyone thinks this is a pretty good idea. It's also pretty simple. If you have a service slot running on your structure that consumes fuel, you'll be in full power and thus you'll have all your defensive timers. If you don't have that, which of course is going to be the case in abandoned structures, you'll be in low power and you lose the armor timer. I think this is very nice and it is going to reduce significantly the effort needed in order to clean up space. I can see, especially in wormhole space, that this can make a very big difference. If for instance you're looking for that new wormhole where you want to live into and you finally find it, but there's always going to be at least like an Astraeus or something like that there, but then you find out it's actually in low power, then you know it's very likely abandoned and you only need 2 timers in order to be able to get rid of it. So very good change, I think everyone will agree on that. The second pillar, new vulnerability and reinforcement system. Here this is a lot trickier. This is also a lot more complex. If you look at this, if you need a chart in order to explain everything in detail, we are talking about pretty complex system, but that's also needed, of course. The idea is to balance the defensibility of these systems, giving everybody the chance to actually show up for the defense of their own structures, with not completely making it impossible to assail these structures. And so as a result, you know, stuff like time zone tanking are problems that are created by the player base, because well, it's a very smart player base in EVE Online and they're going to grab every advantage that they can. And so creating a system of vulnerability and reinforcement timers that is basically balancing all of that out without creating opportunities to really take such an advantage of the system that it makes it impossible to attack these structures is very difficult. But here is what CCP has in mind now: an initial attack that can occur at any date and any time chosen by the attacker. So very big difference, of course. We'll no longer set our own vulnerability times as the owner of the structures, but the shields will be attackable at any time. So personally I don't mind this. I think it makes a lot of sense. In highsec, of course, you need to be war decked for this to happen. A second attack can then occur in the time zone of the defenders, but on the date chosen by the attackers. I'm not exactly sure how this is chosen. Potentially it's going to be tied to your initial attack, of course. That would make sense. If you start on the shields, then you know exactly what your plan is for the second attack as well. But this time it'll be in the time zone of the choosing for the owner of the structure, meaning that they have this initial ability to normally show up if it's within their regular play time. And then a final battle can occur in the time zone and the day chosen by the defenders to allow them a last stand. I think this makes complete sense here. Once again, if for me, for instance, I want to be present, then I would choose something like maybe a Saturday, 1600 EVE time. I'm pretty sure I'll be able to be online then. And so as a result, this is the gist of it, but there's lots of details and nuances in here, because as I said, the player base does tend to try to take advantage of these systems to create as much safety as possible. For instance, one thing that people were very worried about was that this final battle that would occur in a time zone and day of chosen by the defenders would mean that, for instance, a large alliance could set all of their structures at the exact same day and the exact same time, which would of course make it impossible to make any meaningful headway on the destruction of these structures. And so as a result, CCP has listened to all of that, and it's basically going to be like a 4-hour window around that time of their choosing, so 2 hours before and 2 hours after that, where randomly your structure will become vulnerable for that final attack. And so it's a very difficult and complex system. I personally feel like here it's a good attempt to dial the advantages back a little bit from the defenders towards initially giving the attackers some more advantages. A big change here as well is that you will now be able to use data and relic analyzers in order to know all the information on the timers set by the defenders. I think it makes for an interesting mechanic that can yield very good results. Again, for instance, in wormhole space, where you find a low power structure, so you know that they're inactive. Well, take the time to analyze it, see what their exact timers is, and then you know exactly what it's going to cost you in order to get rid of that low power abandoned structure. So overall, I think that this is definitely heading in the right direction. But next to that, CCP actually wants to increase the combat capabilities of these structures, and that's where some of the changes are a bit more controversial. So maybe we'll start with the non-controversial ones. We've got the stand-up fighters. Fighters can be deployed from structures, but they never get any bonuses, unlike in carriers. And so as a result, CCP is going to come out with a special fighter variant for the structures that will be more powerful, but of course that doesn't get any bonuses on top of that. And then there's also the structure module rebalance, which includes Tech 2 variants. And here I think most players are still basically waiting on the actual numbers. What is it going to cost on fitting? What will their actual power be? All of that could still go either way. I basically think that CCP does have all the handles necessary in order to make that a good and balanced change for the structure. But what people don't like is the idea of the super weapons, especially the mid one right here, the gravitational transportation field oscillator, that will be usable on large and XL structures and will be usable in all areas of space. It's not so much the all areas of space or anything like that, but it's the GTFO module. So you grab an area of space and all enemy fleets within it get pushed off the field, meaning that they have to warp back in order to get back into the fight, and that'll be deployable on a large structure, which costs a hell of a lot less than a Titan or an XL structure. That is going to be a problem because in tie-dye fights, from what I've read, I mean, I'll be honest here, I've never been in one of those fights, I've never experienced that weapon, but from what I've seen on the feedback, most people do think that this could be a bit too disruptive and too annoying to have to play around as an attacker, especially when this can then be deployed on something that's relatively cheap, a large structure. And then if you combine this with another change, the new fitting invulnerable state, which is going to be a 5-minute window after you initially anchor the station and it becomes vulnerable. So right before that, you'll have 5 minutes to actually fit your structure. And so here I think that that this combination is something that people expect to be a very big problem. And while I said, you know, I don't have any first-hand experience in this, just thinking back to the last year, I do remember the Imperium, I think right after the summer, deploying to war and them just throwing out Fortizars like candy, just trying to get that beachhead in the middle of enemy territory in order to have that beachhead secured. And they didn't manage to do that because of course they were always immediately engaged without being able to actually fit those structures. But Is that a problem? Well, I think considering that they'll then be able to have a fully fitted Fortizar potentially. I mean, those Fortizars were being thrown out there like candy with a GTFO super weapon, with all the newts, the super long range scrams and all of that sort of stuff on every single one of them. That could potentially become a problem, because I can see them just dropping 3 or 4 Fortizars at the exact same time. I don't think that there is one of those RNG timer mechanics that is prepared for the initial timers there. And then if all of them would have those super weapons, all of those newts, and would be as powerful as any other fully fitted structure, that is potentially going to give attackers a very big advantage when it comes to creating that beachhead. They'll almost inevitably, with just an investment of a number of large structures and all of those fittings, they'll almost inevitably have that beachhead where they can then start to dock their capital fleet. And that indeed, to me, also doesn't make sense as, I would say, an outside observer to the problem itself. So I would personally maybe limit at least some of the most powerful super weapons to the Excel structures at least. And to be honest, the idea of the fitting invulnerable state on first deployment, if I had my choice, I would say just get rid of it. You know the rules on first deploying your structure. You know the risk that you're taking when it is first anchored. And as a result, I don't think that anyone is really asking for that or complaining too much about that initial period where it is true, you're deploying a structure, it gets attacked right off the bat, and you can't use the structure itself. There may be some sort of frustration there, but I think everyone understands why it's there as well. So that one, personally, I sort of agree that that's probably not a good idea, but we'll see how that works out. Let's move on to pillar number 4, which is of course the one that I've been eagerly waiting for. We've got moon mining coming to wormhole space and 0.5 security HISEC systems, and very interestingly, these moons will contain a randomized selection of upgraded standard mineral ore variants, as well as some of the most common varieties of moon goo ores. So I'll be able to provide mining opportunities for moon goo in Dital. That is really awesome. It actually makes it almost worth it to at least try and get that up and running, spend that fuel, spend that material in order to then create a belt that's public for everyone, and that they might actually for the very first time be able to grab some moon goo from HISEC. I think that's going to be very cool. I also think that basically CCP has been looking at the economy, and if you've been watching Eve Talk, you also know that prices of Tech 2 stuff have not come down to previous levels just yet, that they're seeing this as an opportunity to give people a reason to deploy these refineries in wormhole space and in HISEC without completely disrupting the economy, because they're seeing that, well, it is not coming back to the same levels as the passive moon mining that used to exist. So I think that that's only very good news for me personally, of course. I am in the final phases of preparing for that. One thing that I will need to do, of course, is to figure out how to actually scan those moons. But I'm pretty sure that in the time that I have left, I'll be able to figure all of that out on CC, especially with all of your help. So I'm looking forward to all of this. This will also be deployed on CC pretty shortly. I mean, the 13th of February, that's not that much time anymore. And so I would once again highly recommend everyone that has the time to go on CC, test the hell out of all of this so that we can get rid of as many bugs as possible, and that we can get a nice deployment of the new structure systems when they come out in February without too many bugs. And I look forward to bringing yet another refinery online in Dital, and then starting to mine chunks out of a moon there. Sounds really nice. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you all next time.